The NHL Draft Lottery is set for May 5th, and the Boston Bruins have to hit on their 2025 first-round pick, because this time the stakes are way too high to miss.
You're Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Bruins fans, and welcome back to the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. I'm your host, Ian McLaren, and this is a daily show where we discuss all things Spoke B. Today is Wednesday, April 30th, and I want to thank you so much for making Locked On Bruins your first listen every day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. On today's podcast, we're going to discuss the NHL Draft Lottery being set for next week, May 5th, and why the Bruins have to hit on that pick. We'll also break down the projected top 7 picks and who the Bruins may select among that group. Before we get into all that, a quick reminder, you can find the podcast on social media at Locked NHL Bruins. You can find me, my hockey thoughts, dad jokes at Ian C. McLaren. Everydayers will know that I am a lifelong, diehard Boston Bruins fan. I've been covering this team for various outlets for 20 years. I was a full-time hockey news writer for thescore.com for 5 years and have been hosting this podcast since 2019. Quick reminder as well to please subscribe on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Don't forget to hit the like button as well as the bell notification button so that you never miss a thing. On Tuesday, the NHL announced that the draft lottery will be held on May 5th. This, of course, is the broadcast where they share who lands the number 1 overall pick and where these lottery teams will slot in behind them. The San Jose Sharks have the best chance of getting the top pick for the second straight season, and the lottery will determine the top 16 picks in the June draft. The lottery is conducted in 2 phases, as a reminder. The first is to determine the number 1 pick, and the second is to determine the number 2 pick. Teams can only move up 10 spots in the order, meaning only the bottom 11 teams have a chance at the first pick. And the Bruins currently have the 5th best odds at 8.5%. Now, the Bruins, whatever they land on, whether it's first or they can drop to 7th, they absolutely 100% have to hit on that pick. And there's a couple reasons why I say that. First is, obviously, they had a very poor down season, and the fan base is very down on this organization to begin with, especially after the end of the year presser last week, where Cam Neely, Don Sweeney were given votes of confidence, although Sweeney does not have a contract extension. We'll discuss that here in a moment. And fan sentiment is really at a low. So the Bruins need something to hold on to. The Bruins fans need something to hold on to here as they make this pick to see that there are immediate glimmers of hope here. Ideally, they could get someone who could jump right in, and that's possible with a top 7 pick. We've seen that many times in the past where players selected that high will jump into the NHL and make immediate impacts. But at the very least, they need to know that whoever they pick is going to make an impact at some point very soon. They haven't drafted this high in quite some time since Dougie Hamilton, Tyler Seguin. The last high-ish forward that they selected was Fabian Lysell, who's only showing glimmers of hope now, like 4 years later. They've missed on a couple of guys in the first round that did not make impacts. Urho Vakanainen, Trent Frederick kind of made an impact, but was traded to the Edmonton Oilers. John Beecher, a bit of a miss there as well. They need to not reach. They need to stay on the board, and they need to get an impact player who will hit within the next couple of years. If they don't, and again, Don Sweeney does not have a contract extension, if they keep up their trend of going off the board or taking guys with low ceilings who kind of fit into the mold. Yesterday, I discussed how the Bruins kind of need to buck that trend and go for those offensive dynamo players over a guy who may be able to become a Selke Trophy winner at some point. If they do all that again, then yeah, fire Don Sweeney like right after the draft. You're being given an opportunity to turn this team around, and it begins it begins a bit sooner than that with the hiring of a head coach, but hitting on that draft pick is essential to rebuild fan trust and excitement and to preserve your job, because it's really on the line here if you do not hit on this pick. If you go off the board and pick a guy who's projected to go in the teens or 20s, if you take a defenseman, in my opinion, say they get the first overall pick and they stick with the projections of Matthew Schaefer going first overall, that's a mistake in my mind. The Bruins need to prioritize center, wing, forward, and someone who has a high ceiling, and that would be Michael Misa, as we'll see here in a moment. The Bruins simply have to hit on this pick, or there could be direct consequences with Don Sweeney being replaced this summer. You can't go into this pivotal offseason with having to hire a coach, hit on this draft pick, and make some big-time free agent signings and muff any of those things. And missing on the draft pick will have direct consequences on fan excitement, fan trust, and goodwill, because it's really low at the moment, and Bruins fans need something to cling to here as other teams fight for the Stanley Cup. We have longer than expected offseason, and this is something to get excited about, to look forward to, and you quite simply have to make the right decision at the draft table here if you are the Boston Bruins. Now, again, the Bruins finished fifth in with fifth best odds of getting the top overall pick. That means they have an 8.5% chance of getting first overall, 8.6% chance of second overall, 0.3% chance of third overall, 24.5% chance of fifth overall, a 44% chance of sixth overall, and a 14.2% chance of seventh overall. So probably we're looking at fifth or sixth here, and we will discuss who the top players are to keep an eye on as we approach the NHL draft here as the podcast continues. The NBA and Stanley Cup playoffs are in full swing, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if that bet wins. I love how FanDuel makes betting so easy, whether it's picking my favorite teams or diving into player props, from three-pointers to steals to assists to goals, points, Stanley Cup winners. FanDuel has so many ways to bet your favorite props. Plus, after the games begin, you can even combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. Just place a first $5 bet, hit on it, and you'll get that $250 in bonus bets at FanDuel.com. Thank you so much once again for making Locked On Bruins part of your daily routine, free and available on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now, as we learn where the Bruins are going to make their selection, and again, the draft lottery will be held on May 5th, which is Monday. The focus will become who the Bruins are going to take with that respective pick. And there's a bunch of mock drafts coming out. There's a bunch of draft profiles that we'll take a look at. Hopefully we'll get some draft and prospect experts on the podcast to break these guys down. But I thought today I'd start by looking at the breakdown mock draft from Rachel Dory of ESPN, someone I know, someone I trust, and someone whose projections I think we can really put a lot of stock into. Now, it's not necessarily seen as the strongest draft in recent years. Matthew Schaefer, Michael Misa are the top ranked players here. And say if San Jose gets the number 1 overall pick, they took Macklin Celebrini last year. They got Will Smith. So Schaefer is likely the selection for the Sharks, who added a defenseman, according to Rachel Dory, likely to be a bona fide number 1 for years to come. He is a difference maker offensively and defensively. He, of course, comes from Erie of the Ontario Hockey League. He's 6'2", effortlessly moves around the ice. His agility makes him very difficult to beat in one-on-one situations. Executives and scouts around the league, according to Rachel, believe he will be one of the NHL's elite defenders in the next few years and a foundational piece of a cup-contending blue line. The Sharks, like I mentioned, have Celebrini up front, Will Smith. Adding Schaefer on the blue line is a major addition. Schaefer is going to be an impactful transition player on both sides of the puck, play a matchup role, and quarterback a power play unit. He has all the talent and skill to become a top 10 defender in the NHL, and Sharks fans should expect him in the lineup next season. Now, if the Bruins were to land the number 1 overall pick, I mean, all of that is quite tempting. And you want that kind of impact player in your lineup, no doubt. Would the Bruins, if they get the first overall pick, would they go for Schaefer? Or would they go for the area of need that is greatest, which would be the center position? And the second overall pick, according to Rachel Dory, is likely going to be Michael Misa of the Saginaw Spirit of the OHL. And the likely team that will land that pick is the Chicago Blackhawks. They passed on Ivan Demidov in last year's draft in favor of a defenseman, Artem Levshunov, and we'll be lucky if Misa is there for the taking here in 2025. He had exceptional player status in the OHL, which means he was able to make the jump to the OHL at a younger age. He's had one of the best goal-scoring seasons in the league with 62 goals in 65 games. He's projected to be a top-line forward and someone who could be a formidable tandem partner with Connor Bedard. He possesses incredible offensive talent. He thinks about the game at an elite level and plays at blistering speed, ready to step into Chicago's lineup, and has the talent to be an elite center if he continues his current development trajectory. This would be a massive gift for the Boston Bruins. I talked, and everydayers will remember all since the trade deadline, about maximizing your draft pick potential here. And Misa is one of the reasons why I was so keen on the Bruins getting the highest possible pick. If they could somehow get into the top 2, which these 2 guys are certainly locked into those positions, that would be a huge win for the Bruins. Unless you think he's just an offensive talent, Rachel Dory writes, without the puck, Misa finds open spaces and has a knack for scoring at the most critical times. His playmaking and scoring ability are equally dangerous and make him a dual offensive threat. He steadily improved with better back-checking, covering for teammates, and playing a well-rounded game. Combine that with dynamic speed and offensive skill, and the Blackhawks, or whoever lands the second overall pick, are getting a foundational piece. I would love to be able to get a player like Michael Misa, and that's a guy who could probably step in and make an immediate impact for the Boston Bruins next season. Think about Matt Poitras making the Bruins a couple of years ago, post Bergeron and Krejci retirements. This is a guy who could step in right away. And hey, maybe going back to yesterday's conversation, we have a Misa Marner combo on the second line, which would be unreal. Now we'll talk about the third pick here. And the projection is that this will land with the Nashville Predators. And they are taking another guy that Bruins and their fans are high on, James Higgins. Rachel Dory writes, the Predators need skill and they need centers. Higgins fits both of those categories. He's not dynamic the way that Misa is, but he's highly effective. Two-way player who will provide value on both sides of the puck at the NHL level. Stop me if you've heard that Bruins prioritizing that in the past. He brings a high-end motor and speed, has the ability to drive play, supports the puck well, wins battles, and understands spacing. The professional details of his game will translate nicely to the NHL. His playmaking qualities were on display at the U.S. National Team Development Program last season. He was a bit inconsistent with dynamic playmaking at BC, though. He likely needs another season at BC to take another step forward and regain some of his dynamic skill to be a true difference maker in the NHL. Without Gabe Perreault and Ryan Leonard there, he'll be relied on to drive a line, carry the load offensively, and remain defensively responsible. Higgins has the potential to be a complete package in the NHL if he can develop his offensive traits further. Ceiling is very high, and he makes a ton of sense for whoever is drafting top 3, top 5 even. If he could fall to the Bruins, that would be a very nice case scenario. Now, when we're talking about the top 7, let's talk about one more player before moving on, and that would be the Flyers at number 4, projecting to take Porter Martone of the Brampton Battalion in the OHL. He projects as a high-end second-line forward with a mean streak. The Bruins would love to get their hands on him. He's a dual-threat offensive player with ability to score on his own and facilitate for his teammates. Not necessarily a prototypical power forward, but there is some Tom Wilson in him, and he will learn to pick his spots more effectively to use his skill above and beyond being an agitator and physically imposing. His ability to score and facilitate will make him a hard player to defend in the NHL. Doesn't have quite the speed that you might want to see, but if he can add some explosiveness, he could be a first-line point-producing player for a long time in the NHL. And watching him with Matvei Michkov in Philly would be a lot of fun, Rachel says. Type of player who possesses the hard skill that Flyers love and soft skill that gets fans excited. Another guy that would certainly be on the Bruins' radar if he were to be made available. Now we're entering into the territory where the Bruins are most likely to pick, which would be 5, 6, 7. And we'll touch on who could be available there here as the podcast continues. So the Bruins have the 5th best odds of getting the first overall pick, most likely to pick in 5th or 6th based on the odds. They're still going to get a pretty good player there. Rachel Dory of ESPN has them going with the 5th pick, taking a center out of Moncton of the QMJHL, Caleb Desnoyers. And she says, get ready to hear he could be the next Patrice Bergeron on the draft broadcast. Well, those are astronomically high expectations. He does have special traits, Desnoyers. He's a big two-way center out of Quebec. He's a coach's dream in that he understands the assignment. In tight games, he makes smart, simple plays, forechecks with physicality, and makes life difficult for opponents. He leads by example on both sides of the puck, and he is an all situations player. He projects to be a quality second-line center with a decent chance of becoming a first-line player. Ideally, the Bruins would be drafting a first-line center in this draft, but he could fit the bill if all goes well. He's cerebral with excellent playmaking skills. Typically, he isn't flashy, but he's consistent and effective, makes intelligent plays with the puck. He's reliable. He's at his best when he's in pressure-packed games because he finds a way to make the necessary plays to win. The Bruins, 5. If Desnoyers is still on the board, it'd be very surprising if they wouldn't pick a guy with that kind of skill. Now, with the 6th overall pick, Rachel Doerrie has the Seattle Kraken taking Jackson Smith, a big physical defenseman, second best defender in the draft class, more of a stay-at-home guy, qualities of a top 4 matchup guy. Not the kind of guy that I would like to see the Bruins take if they're drafting 6th, but the kind of guy who could complement prior center picks in Matty Beniers and Shane Wright. The next forward, according to Rachel, likely to be taken at 7 is Victor Eklund, and that would perhaps be by the Buffalo Sabres. Victor Eklund is a left winger out of Djurgårdens over in Europe. Sabres are known for swinging on skill and using analytics to evaluate draft-eligible players. Jury's out on whether they've succeeded in that regard, but Eklund has great underlying numbers, including a productive season in Allsvenskan, and his game has all the hallmarks of being translatable to the NHL despite his smaller stature, and that's, for Bruins and their fans, a bit of a red flag because we know they're not keen on guys without size. Going back to some of those misses in the past, Trent Frederick taken over Alex DeBrincat, for example, you see why there. Now, Eklund plays a lot bigger style than his measurements suggest. High-end motor, excellent forechecking. He excels in transition, attacks defenders with tenacity and fearlessness, and he gets his body into position to win pucks. His off-puck play is very mature and would blend well with skill on Buffalo or another team's roster. So he's the guy that could be the 7th pick, a left winger. If the Bruins are looking at centers, they'd probably be looking at one of the next 3 picks if they get as far down as 7. The first would be Anton Frundell, a versatile two-way forward that plays both center and right wing. That flexibility is attractive for all teams, specifically for the Bruins. They need centers, but they also need some right wingers. He had one of the most productive seasons by an under-18 player in Allsvenskan history. He shoots the puck very well, makes smart plays on and off the puck. A tactician of sorts, Rachel Doerrie describes him as, plays with pro details, forechecking well, attacking the middle of the ice, showing strength in hard areas. So he's a guy with some great skill who could be a two-way, versatile, dimension-making player who could easily move up and around the lineup. Kind of like what they were expecting from Tyler Johnson, that kind of production in his prime, at least, they could get from Anton Frundell. The next guy could be Jake O'Brien. He could be a bit of a reach. He's projected to be a high-end second-line center, potential to play on the first line, one of the best playmakers in the draft. The Bruins need that, creating high-danger chances with regularity, manipulates defenders, distributes the puck on the forehand and backhand, uses fakes to freeze defenders and goalies. He has some junior habits like holding the puck too long while hunting for the perfect play, a la Fabian Lysell. But if he can simplify his game and add a step to his skating, there's real top-line potential. He has high playmaking skills, real upside. There is some risk because he's slightly older than other players available, but he's worth a swing for the right team. The next guy is Roger McQueen. And while he comes with injury risk, he is a talent that could not be passed up here at the 10th overall pick. He's 6'5", who skates with speed and agility of someone who's 5'10". Modern day power forward. His projection lacks confidence due to lack of games this season because he had some injury issues. He has the upside of a superstar two-way center. The right-handedness and size add significant value, as does his willingness to impose himself physically. Quality two-way player with significant offensive upside. If he wasn't injured this past season, he could be in the top 5 of this draft class because of his package, skating, skill, physicality, and size, which is very rare. Maybe the Bruins reach for him at 5, 6, or 7. He's the very definition of high risk, high reward. Could be a two-way force in the NHL for years if he can stay healthy, particularly for a team that can take the time for him to develop properly. Do the Bruins have that time? Not necessarily. They'd like a guy who could come in sooner, but the reward could be there long-term for this team. So that's a look at some of the guys who are available in the top 10, focusing mostly on the centers, forwards that the Bruins would be likely to pick. We'll get a better idea on Monday of where exactly they will select, and therefore can make better, more educated guesses as to who that player will be. Drop a comment on YouTube or on social media as to which player you are most leaning to. Who would you like to see the Bruins select, and what happens if they miss on this pick? That's it for today's episode, my friends. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen. Please do check out Locked On NHL Game Night as your second listen. Analysis from around the Stanley Cup playoffs, every game, every night until a champion is crowned. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your favorite team every single day. Please do take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and we'll talk to you again here on the next episode of Locked On Boston Bruins.